The New World Order. Now that's a phrase, isn't it? It just kind of whispers of secret plots, shadowy figures, some hidden hand pulling all the strings and guiding the fate of the world. I'm willing to bet you've come across it. Maybe scrolling online, or deep in some documentary, or yeah, probably in a very heated comment section. But what are we actually talking about when we use that phrase? Okay, so let's start with the myth, the big conspiracy theory. The story usually goes something like this, right? There's this secret global elite, and their master plan is to create one single world government. To do it, they cook up crises, things like pandemics, all to get more control. The end goal? Taking away your freedoms and using crazy surveillance and even mind control to keep us all in line. And the cast of villains in this story? Well, you'll probably recognize the names. It's always these secretive groups like the Trilateral Commission, super powerful families like the Rothschilds, big-name figures like George Soros, and of course, global organizations like the UN. They're all supposedly the puppet masters, pulling the strings from behind the curtain. I mean, it's a heck of a story, super gripping, but here's the twist. What if I told you that the phrase New World Order wasn't first whispered in some secret smoke-filled room? Nope. It was said out loud for everyone to hear right in front of the US Congress. And get this, the date was September 11th, 1990. The person who said it? None other than President George H.W. Bush. And here's exactly what he said. Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge. A new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. Now, context is everything here. You gotta understand what was happening in the world at that exact moment. This wasn't some random speech. Just a few months before, the Berlin Wall had come down. The Cold War was basically over. But then, boom, a whole new crisis explodes. Iraq invades Kuwait. So Bush's speech wasn't some abstract idea, it was a direct response, trying to paint a picture of how countries could work together now that the old rules were gone. So right there, you see this huge gap between the myth and the reality. The conspiracy theory imagines a secret plot for total world domination. But the reality? It was a publicly stated vision for countries to cooperate, to stand up to a dictator's aggression, and to do it all out in the open through things like UN resolutions. But here's the thing. Bush didn't just invent this idea out of thin air, not at all. He was tapping into a concept that had actually been in the works for decades. You could call it the blueprint for a rules-based world. Now, the fancy political science term for this is the liberal international order. And what is that? Well, it's basically the system that was put together after the absolute devastation of World War II. The core idea was, hey, maybe we can prevent another catastrophe if we all agree to cooperate, use institutions like the UN, encourage free trade, and just generally play by a shared set of rules. And this idea has deep roots. We're talking about something that's been evolving for almost a century. You can trace it all the way back to the end of World War I with the old League of Nations. It really got serious with the creation of the United Nations after World War II. And it just kept growing, adding economic pieces like the World Trade Organization in the 90s. If you want to find the original DNA for all of this, you've got to go back to President Woodrow Wilson and his famous 14 points. His big ideas were things like, let's have open diplomacy, no more secret deals. Let's have free and equal trade. And the big one, let's create a general association of nations, a group that could protect every country, whether they're big and powerful or small and vulnerable. Those basic principles became the bedrock of everything that came after. And for a long time, for decades, really, that system more or less worked. It wasn't perfect, but it kept a relative peace and kicked off this incredible wave of globalization. But that was then. Today, that old order is starting to fracture. You can literally see the cracks starting to appear all over the place. So let's talk about those cracks. Crack number one is all about ideas. We've seen this powerful rise of national populism, and it's a direct challenge to that whole ideal of international cooperation. The argument is that liberalism has gone too far, that it's eroding national identity and weakening communities. You have thinkers like Patrick Deneen who make the case that this intense focus on individual freedom has actually, paradoxically, made the state more powerful and left people feeling disconnected. Crack number two, the institutions themselves. This is basically a huge backlash against Wilson's whole general association of nations idea. There's this growing, deep distrust of globalism. Critics look at organizations like the UN and see them as bloated, inefficient bureaucracies that are trying to steal away national sovereignty.
And that feeling is what fuels movements like America First.
All right, crack number 3 is all about the economy. And it's really a story of unintended consequences. Think about the rise of Chimerica, that super tight economic bond between China and America. It was a massive engine for globalization, for sure. But here's the flip side. As all these Western companies moved their factories to China, it hollowed out entire industries back home. And for a lot of people, it felt like that promise of equal trade had been broken. And that brings us to the 4th and final crack: technology. You know, the internet was supposed to be this amazing tool for connection, but that's not exactly how it played out, is it? Instead, social media algorithms have trapped us in these echo chambers. They amplify the most extreme voices, spread misinformation like wildfire, and have absolutely shredded the trust we used to have in, well, in everything: the media, science, even government. Okay, so if the old world order is cracking apart, what comes next? It really feels like we're standing at a massive global crossroads, and you can already see the outlines of a new structure starting to form. The buzzword you'll hear from experts is multipolarity. What's that? Well, instead of one or two superpowers dominating everything, we're moving to a world where power is spread out among a bunch of major players. Think the US, China, India, Brazil, and other regional powers. The key takeaway is this: the era of one country calling all the shots, yeah, that's over. So what will this multipolar world actually look like? That's the huge question. The Munich Security Report basically lays out 2 very different futures. On one hand, you have the optimistic view: a world that's more fair, more inclusive, where more countries get a say. But then there's the pessimistic view, which warns that all this could just lead to more chaos, more conflict, and a ton more competition as everyone jockeys for influence. Now, this doesn't mean we should assume the worst. It's not all doom and gloom. As one analyst, Diogo Ramos Coelho, put it so well, a fractured world is not necessarily a ruined one. The quiet drift toward collapse is not inevitable. We're just in a messy, really uncertain period of transition. And that leaves us with the fundamental question of our time. The old rulebook, the one that governed the world for nearly 80 years, is breaking down. So the real question isn't if a new world order is coming. It's who's going to get to write the new rules.